everyone. This is a sobriety panel that was sort of whipped together. But I'm very happy to have all of you here. As very informal because I happen to be friends with all of these people. I mainly in the room, on the panel, in the space. So I'm very thrilled. And I didn't ask for any of your bios. So I'm just going to do it off of what I hope I know. This is my best friend. He works in luxury sales and also dabbles in PR and is an all-right content creator. Then we have the queen of content, Ms. Renesha Monaco. Oh, also, sorry, Ivor Pinder, everybody. Renesha Monaco, sober content creator, full-time now, and also owns Sober Social, which is a mocktail competition that happens annually that I've had the pleasure of going to twice, and we will hear more about that. And then Fanny, of the designer of Questia, whose stuff, you've got pillows over here, you are in this space, and you probably do more than what I said. She's also done my braids. So, not an extra plug, but she is my hairstylist as well. Yeah, right? And we're going to be speaking from, I'm going to be speaking from my sober perspective, which I will share. This is a safe space, but not everybody here has a history of addiction. Some people are just sober curious. Some people it's a health thing. And people will share however much they are comfortable with because this is being recorded and we all have professional lives. I'm going to be very honest because that's who I am. But these are our lovely guests. I knew you wanted to clap, so I'm going to let you clap. Actually, before we start, I will say this event is being actually thrown by Justin Agyarko behind the cameras.
Woo. Love you, Justin.
We are hosted at the lovely Toronto Designers Market. If this is your first time here, I encourage you to shop. Check out the plethora of designs and goods that are behind me. We also have free beverages from Groovy and Rubicon. Thank you, and thank you to Optics PR for helping secure that. And we have goodie bags with skincare from L'Occitane en Provence de Provence.
That's such perfect inflection. It's crazy.
Thank you. So make sure you grab a little goodie bag before you go. DJ Blavo is going to be on the deck, and we have catering coming. So stick around for jollof rice and some food as well, and Hidden Smirk photo booth. We will discuss more, but there's also some testimonial videos we will request at the end, which I will give direction closer to that time, but make sure you also get a photo. Now for the heavy conversation. It's not going to be that heavy. It's going to be a good time. But I come to this conversation from what's the word I'm looking for? A lived experience of sobriety. I was in active addiction for 4 years. I drank and did a lot of cocaine for 4 years because of trauma that I had from my childhood, from an abusive partner. And when I came here for the first time from New Brunswick and tried to infiltrate the fashion space, I found it very difficult to navigate. I felt like there was drinking all the time. I knew people who were putting on fashion shows while actively high on the drugs that I had been using. And so I found it very hard to figure out how to navigate all of that and stay sober. Relapsed and slipped a bunch of times. Got sober at my dad's. Shout out. He's going to hate I did that. And then came back and tried again. I did slip in my sobriety a couple of times, still again by being in these spaces, but thanks to all of the sober people on this panel and also the friends here who have kept me on an honest path, it's been a lot easier. I do think that my lack of sobriety also comes from feeling othered in a white community, and while everyone on this panel is black, I don't have any questions specific to race, but if that happens to be a part of this conversation, which I think it might be, I welcome that. But I wanted to start off by asking everybody if they remember the first time that they drank, because being an East Coaster, people would rub rum on my gums if I got molars coming in as a numbing agent. Yep. People at the cottage were giving me beers at the age of 2, and that is a film photo that was taken in 1996, and it was a point of pride. And then I started drinking actively at 21. So Ivor Pinder, do you remember the first time you either as a child jokingly consumed alcohol or had seriously had a drink?
Well, I come from a West Indian background, so I was born in the UK, but my mom is from Jamaica, my dad's from Barbados. So I always had alcohol within the mix. And for anybody in this crowd that knows the term Ray and Nephews, that's kind of the level that we were playing with. It was a 40% proof. But if you want to flash forward to, I want to say 2002, 2003, I grew up in Oshawa, Ontario. I moved back to London after being away for a long period of time. And I had that feeling of kind of imposter syndrome. I'm not British. I'm not white. I'm not a lot of things. So I'm kind of in this space. I don't know anybody. Nobody knows Tim Hortons. Nobody knows hockey. I'm like, what is this? So the first party I went to, I kind of just went hard. Like I literally went there. I'd never drank before, seriously. So I remember mixing like MD 2020, absinthe and something else, and just throwing up everywhere. Sorry to say, but just throwing up everywhere. When I reflect on that now, I realize that I was basically drinking my nerves away. That was the reality of it. But at the time, I just thought it was something to do because everybody was drinking. And we've all been part of this kind of energy when you go to a party. There's that kind of that preamble where you're like, are you going to the party? Yeah, okay, great. Oh yeah, what are we going to drink? I don't know, we're going to pre-drink. So that seemed to be a part of it. And that kind of put me through. So that was the first time and not the last.
Not the last.
Yeah.
Renesha, what about you?
Yeah, so I do remember, unfortunately. So I was growing up. I was like very like sheltered as a kid, and usually when that happens, you just want to like do the complete opposite, like go crazy. So I remember in high school, I went on a camping trip with some friends. But I took my dad's like minivan. That was a camping trip. Okay, we took the minivan. Could you just put back to the back seats, and that's your bed. I took like 4 of my friends, and we went out to like grew up in Hamilton, so we went to. There was a campsite that's like by Wild Waterworks. I don't remember that. So that was my first camping experience. And during this time, I was like, this is the time. We're gonna get alcohol. Someone's gonna get alcohol. So I remember like somebody knew, there's always like this one guy in high school that's gonna get the stuff.
Yeah.
So this guy shows up with like a bottle of Smirnoff. And I'm like, yes, we're gonna get drunk. I'm so excited. Cause like in my head, it was like so glamorized that like, it's gonna do something magical to me. Like I just thought it was gonna be incredible. And so obviously I don't know what's gonna happen. So got the Smirnoff, got the Fruitopia, didn't even mix it properly. It's like all Smirnoff
and
one drop of-
Fruitopia?
Yeah.
That's crazy.
The perfect mix.
That's crazy work.
Chugging this Smirnoff, and I'm like, when's it gonna happen? When's it gonna happen? And I didn't feel anything until I stood up, and then everything's spinning, and then I pretty much just like vomited. I always end up vomiting. And to this day, I can never drink Fruitopia because I can still taste.
I will remember that for every future birthday party you have, event, I won't bring you Fruitopia.
Yeah.
So Fanny, what's your experience in terms of, do you remember the first time that you had a drink, either like I said jokingly as a kid, was it around you a lot?
So my sister, it's a little bit, I'll say different. It's more, so I'm from Cameroon, and with African parents, and the thing for us was that there was a lot of things that you couldn't do, and drinking, anything like that could lead to addiction. Like drinking, smoking was literally a no-go. So I just grew up like that. We were not allowed to drink, even if there was drink, in the house, and we will, let's say when there was gathering or everything, there were always drink around. But we were not allowed to drink. And actually, I grew up in France. And so in France, they have this drink for kids, panache, which is literally just like I want to say maybe like rosé without alcohol, in a way. So that was, you always had that in every single gathering at home. And that was for the kids. So that we just were not allowed to. And the main memory that I had was, so we do a lot of crepes, at home, like pancakes, French pancakes, and we put rum in there. That was the only time. I remember actually, we just get excited about, drinking, having alcohol, like the adult thing, right? Because, in the French recipe, you actually add rum in the recipe, or beer, and beer as well. So that's just part of it. Beer, rum, and then I remember we were just so excited to have that because that was the only time we were allowed to. So now the first time really I remember it was as an adult. So fun fact, you were talking about Smirnoff earlier. So I moved in the U.S. and I'm at the university there. Got hired on campus by Agyarko, who actually is the owner of Smirnoff. And it's funny. I think that was one of the main things because they are like spirits and beverages company. And at the interview, I told them, I don't drink. I mean, I know all the brands because I see them, in advertising in France and things like that. But I'll bet I know everything about drinking, about why, all the drinks that you have. And I got hired. And actually, that's why I really started drinking when I, at work. When I was working with Agyarko because we had a gathering after work. So that's really when I was in the US, that was the first time I left home. And that's really when I got to experience drinking, and I was as an adult, or like a young adult.
That's so interesting. I know we're going to get into like all the different places you've lived, because I think that that's very, like, it's such a compelling thing. And every culture sees alcohol so differently. And I think we talk about that here a lot, what they do in France or how they drink in Europe, but also having, African parents. I find that super fascinating. So we'll get into that more, but I am curious. We'll bring it back to you, Ivor. So you mix all this booze and you throw up, as we've all done, at least speaking from personal experience. Tell us then, I guess, like, what is your continued journey with alcohol for the next years to come, I guess, up until we get to this moment where you are now the sober person that I know?
It's a bit of a tough one, because actually going after the party, I remember the 2 days after the party, I just felt like garbage.
Oh my God.
And I'm like, why would people want to do this on a regular basis? What is the pull here? But what you found very quickly was I had already kind of a support system to make that a positive experience. I had a father who was an alcoholic, a functioning alcoholic. So alcohol was always a part of the conversation. I remember he once let me try like beer once when I was younger, and I just thought it was disgusting. Like, what's wrong with you? But now came a conversation where he saw that I was drunk, saw that I'd come home drunk, sobered up, and it was like, do you want to go to a pub? And I'm like, yeah, let's go. And then starts this, it's not even enabling, I don't think that's the right word, it's the fact of there's a cultural expectation in the UK that you drink. It could be Tuesday, you're going for a drink. Happy birthday, you're going for a drink. Oh, you lost your dog, we're going for a drink. So that became on anything. So that kind of became this rigmarole of this drinking thing. You pair that with education, you pair that with being young and trying to find yourself in the world, and that's kind of how my journey continued through there.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Renesha, tell us a little bit about your journey until your sobriety.
Yeah, it's interesting. I'm really trying to think back, because it wasn't really, I don't know. It was just kind of, up until the point, like, okay, high school, had my first drink, and then went to college. And in college, oh my gosh, it was funny because I think the first couple months, I wasn't even like 19 yet. And then I kind of felt like this FOMO, because like everyone's like, I couldn't even get into like the college bars and stuff. They wouldn't let me do that.
Right.
And then once I finally hit 19, then I'm like, okay, like, let's like do this. So, you're having like those pub nights in the school, and then there was always these parties to go to. I'll never forget, happened again. There was like a college party, like off campus, and like one of those like houses. And it was Pancake Tuesday, and I remember specifically because we're like, let's all party and make pancakes and drink. And it's like, why can we just like not? Like, it's just like so silly. So we're making pancakes and like all this breakfast food, awesome, and then of course, alcohol. So obviously, and surprisingly, I will not forget, it was Smirnoff again. And I know
dirty twice.
I should have been like, no, not this. But that was a hot thing back then. It was like Smirnoff or like Black Fly. And then there was like
God.
One Bacardi Breezer, I think was the other
Mike's
one.
Hard Lemonade.
Yeah, Mike's Hard Lemonade. Like, so, yeah, it was Smirnoff again. And yeah, just like everyone's wanting to get wasted. And I definitely threw up that night. And it's just like, what a waste. Like, what a waste of your day.
Yeah.
But it didn't stop me. After that, it's like, it's not gonna stop. So it's just like party. And then like I only would usually just drink like when my friends had like special occasions. But then again, there's like when there's not, like it's like everyone's birthday. There's always a birthday. There's always a holiday. So yeah, and everyone always wants to go out. They're not like, let's go out and do something fun. It's like, let's go to the bar. Let's go to the club. Everything's around drinking. Yeah. But yeah, that was pretty much the journey. And then, are we talking about now? Or are we not yet? We're not there yet,
We
right?
can touch on.
No, we're not there yet.
No, I'm looking at my questions and we're not there yet.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah, so that's the journey. Yeah.
Fanny, what about you? What's your journey with alcohol? How has it evolved over time?
I think for me, it's been a conscious, I would say conscious and deliberate choice on, how to, if I wanted to partake or not. I know that, just like I said earlier, in the beginning, growing up, it was just a no-go. So we were not allowed to drink. And so even when I would go out with my friends, that was, it was always in the back, of my head, just, you just can't drink. And then, the position at Agyarko, where after work now we have to test the new drinks and the new products that are being launched, and so that's really when I got introduced to to alcohol. But same thing. It was, I think I was already at an age where I just knew that, and I had seen a lot as well. I've seen what it did to others, like to my friends, to some family members, and I kind of like put two and two together and say, oh, maybe that's why I wasn't, it's not good to drink, because my friend drank and this is what happened, and I've seen like all the different, I'll say, maybe just the side effects on people, and I just didn't want to be like that in a way. So even when I started really drinking, it was, for me, it was okay. That's part of my job in a way, to understand the product. But for me, I didn't want to not to be in control.
Right.
So yeah, and today, same thing. I think, it's just, I think the not being able to do it when I was younger, and then seeing all the different in and out on people, and how the effect on others and my friends or people around me, I just were very conscious that, I don't want that. And yeah, they're having, maybe they need that to have fun, but it's not something that I want to partake in. And it's kind of like stayed like that. Today, it's even more, I'll say, like engraved in me, in the sense that now it became part of just my lifestyle, and I took it to more like when it comes to health, so yeah, so it kind of like evolved a little bit. There are some drinks that I enjoy and I'll have them, but I'm very firm in just not being dependent and not going on the other side in a way.
Amazing. Thank you. Yeah, I like your perspective a lot, just because I think that, I know, seeing from my perspective, it's like an addiction perspective, but there are people who are just sober curious, health conscious, aware that it's something that they don't want to partake. And I think a lot of conversations that we have now are they're either hard abstinent conversations around we're never going to have it again, but I don't think that that's the reality for a lot of people. So I really appreciate your perspective. And to share just a little bit about my journey, because it echoes yours a bit, is that my mother was an alcoholic. And I think that I saw that, and I saw the detriment that it was causing her, but still, when she got sick, I saw it. I think what I'm hearing that somehow resonates for all of us is that sense of community, or it's what you're supposed to be doing. And so the minute she was gone and I went to find community, it was in bars, and it was in that same space. So then I was doing the thing that had put her in the hospital without even thinking of those ramifications, because it was where the people were. And then things, pun intended, snowballed way downhill. And now we're back and better than ever. But
Fantastic.
I thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. I
Really
appreciate
good.
the
Really
joke. So let's talk, I guess, a bit about when it turned more of a sour experience, and what that relationship looks like now, and how your sobriety is now.
It was a two-parter, and sorry for being long-winded with it, but I think it explains a lot. So the first part was in 2008, my father passed away from alcoholism. So it was a very weird situation. My father was an only child, and my grandmother being from Barbados, they lived together in the UK. My parents came to the UK in 2001. They separated, and my mum went back to Canada with my sister, and it was just me and my dad. So with that, my dad and I really didn't have a lot of conversations. We kind of just went in and out and things like that. My dad had always drank. It was always kind of a running joke that he would have beer cans in the back of the car, but my dad wasn't an aggressive drunk. My dad was the most lovely person on the planet, and super giving. You would never think in talking to him that he's functioning, but as we all know, functioning it has different layers. In 2008, my grandmother called me and asked me to come back home. I was living up north in London, come home because my dad wasn't well. And I went, okay, came down, and my dad was in my grandmother's back room. And I'm like, Dad, why are you laying down there? And he's like, oh, I feel tired. And my grandmother said, lift up the blanket. And she lifted up the blanket, and my dad looked probably the equivalent of about 8 months pregnant, because his stomach, basically his liver had failed. And it has started to distill his stomach. So at that point, I'm like, Dad, we're calling an ambulance right now. And we did, but unfortunately, it was too late. They put him on antibiotics and all that. Probably one of the hardest moments in my existence is coming back to my grandmother's place and telling her that her only son has passed away in that hospital, and I had to claim that body. That was the first rocking point. The second rocking point was the fact of me trying out to be a Metropolitan Police officer in the UK. You can't, I know, wild. But because for anybody who knows me here, like a police officer, yes, cop. But it's weird because when you give yourself a goal, it's very hard to have the normal routines work against it. And alcohol works against a fitness goal. In the UK, we don't have guns. So you only have your body. So I'm like 178 at the time. I went up to like 212 pounds. For the fact of I'm gonna have to chase somebody down and probably hold them down for a period of time. So for me, drinking then became a non-starter in that sense, but it was very interesting to see how my friends reacted. For you bond very quickly over, let's go for a drink, let's go to the bar and all that. I'm going to the bar still, but I'm having an orange juice. And they're like, what are you doing, bro? I'm like, oh, I'm just having an orange juice. And after a while, the friends start to erode. And that's probably the first shedding of friendships that I had. So the people that were left were the ones that supported me no matter what I was doing, rather than the ones that just supported me because they were a good time to have when it comes to drinking and partying. So that's where things really kind of changed for me.
Thank you for sharing all that. I was like trying not to get emotional because you and I have talked about this at length, and I was like, hold it together. Renesha, what about you? At what point did you go from, college party phase into adulthood into I don't want to have this in my life anymore or be drinking anymore?
Yeah, so it's a little different for me. Like, it was about 2 years ago, but a lot of things had happened at the same time. So I had just gotten out of a relationship. I had just gotten let go from my job in tech. I had some health issues, and I also wanted to kind of like challenge myself to see if I could go a year without. The first goal was like to go a year without drinking. Just because I always did dry January, but I'd never done longer than that. So I always like to give myself little challenges. And so I was like, this would be a really good challenge. Like, I wonder if I could do it. Like, could I go through a whole year without drinking, go through those birthdays, all those holidays? Like, would I be able to do it and have the discipline? So I really wanted to do that. And also during that time when I was laid off, I had like 3 months severance, which is like very rare. Like, you never get that. And so I was like, okay, I'm not going to waste this. This is like a once in a lifetime opportunity. Like, what am I going to do with this time I've been like blessed with? So I decided I was going to start my own business. And then I was like, okay, what's this business going to be though? Because it has to be something that, like, when you're starting a business, it has to be, you're solving a problem. So I was like, what problem am I going to solve? Like, what do people need right now? So it all came together because I was like, okay, during that time I wanted to go a year sober. Okay, is there even alcohol-free events in the city? Like, what could I do to like kind of help myself through this process? And I noticed that there was like a major gap in the market. There wasn't anything. So that's kind of like, it kind of all came together. I was like, eureka moment, like, oh my gosh, I'm going to host alcohol-free events. Because Toronto loves like new things. Like, they love like what's like, what's new, what's different. So I knew that like that would be a really cool thing to do. And so yeah, that kind of like how everything kind of started. And then that's when I started Sober Social Club. And also during that time, challenged myself to go a year without drinking. And yeah, and then during that time, similar to what happened to you as well, is like, you start to have these friends. It's so funny because like it's so stereotypical. Like, you think like it would happen, but I feel like everyone's story like is always like, okay, and then your friends was like, why are you drinking? And then you lose these friends. And it's like, it's so weird that like that's like the term, like that's the straw that broke the camel's back, like that I'm not drinking. It's so bizarre.
No shots.
I've always just seen it as like, at least from my experience, it was like misery loves company. We're all drinking because we're unhappy and we're miserable together. And the minute I get happy and I get successful, you want to dip? Bye. Yeah. Like, it's your loss. Right. That's how I see it. But that's my perspective. No. That's also coming from like the East Coast is sad. And so here I think there's a great sober community because there it's like you work on a fishing boat and you drink because you are physically exhausted every day, and that is the only thing. Like, there's only now having mocktails. Like, your event would be bananas to the people I grew up with. They could not imagine what you're putting on every year. So, but anyway, continue. Sorry.
Yeah, no. It's so true though. It's like, like misery loves company and stuff like that. But it's also interesting because then you really realize like you're literally sober, and then you realize who your real friends are. Like, then I was like, oh my God, like now I see like these people are not my friends. And it's like a blessing in disguise because then you just lose all that toxic stuff, and then you find your community and you're able to thrive, which I love.
Or if you're you build the community, because we are going to get to that as well. So Fanny, I know you're coming from the health perspective as well, but do you have any recollection of any time that you did have a drink and you were like, I don't want to do this anymore? Or it seems like it was so ingrained in you from the start, but I am curious if there was ever one pivotal moment that you remember that you're like, nah, we're good.
So meaning that I didn't want to not drink anymore, or to stop drinking?
Yeah, to stop, to halt. Either to stop, or you had this moment of like you were going to maybe like recommit to that reframing. But it does sound to me like it's been that you're a disciplined, controlled person. I have learned. So it sounds to me like it was from the start.
No, so it's true. Yeah, so I don't think I can speak to that because it's actually never been even a question. Now, I'll say on the other way actually, in the sense that I, especially when being in the U.S. and then also when I moved here, those are the two places where I was living on my own. And one thing that I kind of took from home was we did gathering, and when I was in the U.S. or especially when I came here, I was hosting a lot. I loved to just have parties or just event at home, gathering, having friends together, sharing meals, things like that, and most of my friends drank actually. So it was always like the joke, because they will come and there was never like alcohol, so they always will bring the bottle, and so it was kind of like the joke, and I'm just like it's that you have good food and then just bring the drink. So that was that was almost like you want to start drinking to be part of a group in a way, in the same way as you're like, oh, actually who my friends are, so I'm like, oh, do I need to really start drinking to be your friend? But at some point I feel like we were at an age where we kind of like respected each other boundaries, so they knew that for me was a no-go, and it just became a joke, and then they would just literally bring the type of drink that they wanted, and then I'll take care of the rest. So so it's never really been an issue. And then even question of starting to drink, I was just like, it's we'll be together, and then so one thing that I actually started doing, I started drinking in wine glasses, but putting like non-alcoholic drinks in there, just to kind of like be just to be together and have the same, make it look like we are together and we drinking the same thing. So I've done that. Became a joke, and then we just made it work.
Absolutely. I think that's so great. That's so nice to hear. I also have a fancy glass at dinner. I pop my sparkling apple pear from Costco, not a sponsor, and I put it in my fancy glass, and my boyfriend knows to get me out my fancy glass every night for dinner to make me feel like I'm being bougie, because for some reason I think we think that drinking Prosecco and champagne and Moet Chandon is bougie, and I'm like, you know what, not having a headache is what's bougie tomorrow morning. Feeling good is what's going to be bougie. But I also know socialites in this community who have told me what they're secretly drinking in their drinks, and it's not alcohol, and I'm like, y'all lying in front of everyone. You're out here with a club soda and a splash of cranberry. Y'all lying, pretending that you've got something that you don't have to keep up appearances.
But actually, what? That's actually it's the bougie thing, it's same thing. I mean, that the main one drink that I really enjoy having is champagne, and that was same thing, because like, the only thing kids could have, it was like, okay, just like have a sip.
Like New Year's and stuff like that.
But it was champagne. So, the whole glass and the mannerism and everything. So that's they're just part of the whole thing.
Well, listen, I'm pro a Prosecco. That's my new thing now, is finding a good Prosecco, but I do agree with you. Renesha, you gave us a perfect segue into learning about your company, Subbar Social. And I am even more curious now that I've heard the start of it, because I in my head, I've not known your full journey until now, and so I didn't know how long you had been sober to build this. So I think it's really interesting that you had this time, you wanted to build something new, but I also wanted to ask you about what it was like building a company like this and an event like this, because I know, at least in the last 3 years, Dry January has been the impetus for all of the drinks we're basically drinking now and this whole new market for non-alcoholic drinks and events. And so I imagine sort of being at the cusp of the start, but then this whole ramp up of these types of events must have been really interesting from a business perspective. So I'm curious about your journey, if you can share a little bit about that. And also, like, was it more difficult? Was there a lot of competition, or did you feel like I am starting something, and being at your most recent one, the community is still really coming out and supporting you? So I'm excited to hear like how you got there.
Yeah, there's like so many layers to this question because I think about it a lot. Like, so yeah, starting So Bar Social Club was like an interesting experience because there was nothing like that. So it was like a blessing and a curse because it's like there's nothing to compare it to, but then there's nothing to compare it to. So so it's like, okay, cool, I can make this my own thing. I have full creative control, but then you have this like huge responsibility because I want this to be incredible. If it's not, then everyone will be comparing sober events to like my event. Right? Because it's the first of its kind. So I really want to make sure that like when I create my events, they're next level events that are unforgettable and people are going to have a really great time, because then that pretty much will affect how they view sobriety and like if they want to try to do it long term, or maybe if they're sober curious, or if they're actually sober. And so like when I'm building my events, I really have to think about, okay, when you have a sober event, usually when you have events, people count on alcohol to have fun. So when you don't have the alcohol, how are people having fun? Yeah. So when I build my events, I think about having like really good activations that people can distract themselves, right? So like you're not even thinking about drinking. You're just thinking about having a good time with your friends and like making memories in a different way. And a night that you want to remember, which I think is really great too. Having creative control over that was really fun, and getting to find this fun ways to bring people together. And then like with the competitions, having the mixologists and making sure that they have the skills to actually create drinks that people are going to want to enjoy. Like, they can't be shit. Like they have to be really good, like it has to be, because everything has to be perfect and really, really good and elevated. And so luckily, when I had my first event at El Macambo that you guys went to, sold out event, 500 people, like it was crazy. And I couldn't believe I pulled that off. Like, wow, 500 people came to an event that doesn't have alcohol? Like that's insane. So that was really inspiring. And I just felt so proud of myself to be able to do that. And then just to show people that like you can have fun without alcohol. Yep. And it's just amazing. Like that's so cool. Whoever thought you could actually do that. And so that's pretty much how it started, and it's still growing and growing. And I think the thing that's really helping now is that people are a lot more open-minded to the idea of like being sober curious. And there's so many celebrities now that have non-alcoholic products that have really helped to like move the whole movement forward. Because I think that like if you find out that like your favorite actor or musician has a non-alcoholic product, you're like, wow, like this is legit. Like I want to try this, or like. So like Katy Perry has her non-alcoholic wine, and Tom Holland has his non-alcoholic beer. Yep. And it's like, wow, this is so cool and really inspiring. And the products are getting better and better and better. Yep. And that's great, because I remember when I used to do Dry January, when I first started like 10 years ago, I'd be like looking, and the only thing I find is like this non-alcoholic sparkling apple juice. And I was like, this is so bad. Like, this is like, Yeah. And now you can get this non-alcoholic wine that tastes exactly like wine. You wouldn't even know the difference. Yeah. And I think that's great for people who are going to events and really want to feel included. Like, when you host your parties and you say like you have your fancy glass, and that's just a smart hack. Yep. Like, because people don't know what you're drinking. They're not drinking from your glass. Like, this is yours. So it's nice that you have something that makes you feel special. Even with your dinner, you have something that makes you feel special. And people just want something that's like in their hands to hold. So that when they're at social events, they can just, like Heineken 00, my favorite hack. Yeah. No one ever knows that's not actual.
Yeah, can look exactly the same.
Yeah. And that's such smart marketing, because you're at an event, you have that drink, and people won't be like, why are you drinking? Yeah. Oh, I have my drink. Yeah. Cheers. Yeah. Great.
And a big thing when I started was a lot of people would say to me that either they felt uncomfortable not holding something, or they didn't want people to think that they weren't drinking. And it was literally the lack of having something in your hand. And I was just like, why is this the hurdle that we're having, is holding a glass or holding a cup or holding something? And then everyone started telling me they were lying about what was in it. And so then that sorted itself out. But yeah, that's like the big hurdle. And now we all put them down. Now we're all pros at our content. And then we're like, no glass in the photo at all. But for a while it was, we needed to be, yeah, George Pimentel ain't gonna let you hold a cup.
Nope.
I'll tell you that right now. And yeah, to clarify for anyone who's not been to one of your events, at least the most recent one, because that's the one freshest in my memory, was 6 people competing for mocktail competition.
Oh, the first year was 6. This year was 4.
Yeah, so they all make amazingly crafted drinks that are all non-alcoholic, and they compete and they win a prize and they win a golden shaker, and you win prizes throughout. Tisha from Hidden Smirk was there, took some gorgeous photos of me and John, who's in the front, and other lovely people. And there's tons of activations. It was very lovely. I loved both years, but it's a really great mocktail competition and something to do in January, because there's nothing going on in this month in January. Literally, how do I celebrate my birthday? Going to your mocktail competition every year. That's the new thing on the docket. Ivor, you're the only man on the panel. And I feel that sobriety and masculinity must also be a thing. And also, now that you've been so candid about your experience with your dad, I'm really curious if you feel that there is a double standard either around like the health conversation and women needing to be more healthy, or like manly men drink, or how you've felt about your sobriety and your manly man masculinity.
Thank you for dropping the tone with that.
You're welcome.
I am crap at math, but I love data. And I know that that's going to make sense, because 76% of people that live in Canada drink. And of that, 74% of that cluster are mostly masculine or mostly men. Now, for me, the reason I say that is for the fact of when you think about what it is to be a man, whatever that is deemed by there, alcohol seems to be an intrinsic part of that from a very young age. Whether it's going out to parties, drinking beers with friends, having a keg, whatever it is, that kind of gets wrapped with it. I think one of the things that happens, especially being a person of color, being a black man, is that's doubled down. So when I look at my family, not only my father, but my father's generation, his brothers, his cousins, his nieces and nephews, all of them deal with alcoholism in varying degrees, and more severe than my father's that took his life. So I think that there's unfortunately a tie-in of, the strength of a drink that ties into the strength of you as a man. But like I said, when it comes to data, what really concerns me is the fact that for all the people that are drinking, about 19 or 20% of that 76%, they're drinking 5 or more drinks regularly a week. And that's considered excessive drinking, and that's in one sitting. So you then take that and look at the larger, extrapolation of $16.6 billion was spent in Canada dealing with people who have either died or have been affected by alcoholism. That's insane.
Wow.
The alcohol industry makes $26 billion a year selling beers, wines, and spirits. So there's really this weird disconnect in the fact of not even masculinity, but just generally what is the impact of actually drinking. And I think that we're now in an amazing space where you have events like you're doing at the moment, which I think are super important to give you the alternative, because my father's generation and most men's generation didn't have an alternative. It was drink or something's wrong with you. And that's where I think we're kind of coming across now. So I think the conversation is changing. I think that, especially if you're looking at Gen Z and Gen X, and millennials, everybody's so much more health conscious. Yeah. Everybody's doing yoga and Pilates and weight training and Ozempic's out. Like everybody's doing everything, right? But everybody's out there doing something to maintain their health. And they're also understanding that very quickly, there are 5 or 6 types of cancers that are directly derivative of alcohol itself. I'm a bit of a weirdo, so I was doing the math. If you're looking at Canada specifically, and the average drinker is drinking about 10 liters of pure spirits a year. That's literally 30 of these cans of pure just alcohol. That's an amazing amount of poison to put in one person's body. And I'm not here to stand on a soapbox and say, you don't drink. Everything in moderation. But when you're in these spaces, especially for men, there is sometimes a difficulty when addiction's there. How do you deal with it? And I'm so glad that you brought up the concept of, celebrities, because Tom Holland, I had a chance to speak about that. And Tom Holland said that he realized he had an addiction issue. He realized that when he was drinking, it was going to excess, and he didn't like it. And he was just in that privileged position where he could actually make an effective change, create Barrel, which is his non-alcoholic beer. And I've tasted it, it's fantastic. So it's masculinity and alcohol, like masculinity and cars, it's kind of tied in. And I think the only way to deal with that stigma is forthright. If you know yourself that you have a problem with alcohol or addiction in general, it's down to you. 1,000 people can support you, but if you're not willing to make that definitive change, it won't change. And I think within the industry, within alcohol in general, there's a lot of work to be done of kind of removing that stigma and being like, this is a person, here's a problem, let's help.
Exactly. Thank you. Also, Tom Holland, sponsor us, please. Shout out to Barrel. So Fanny, you mentioned living and growing up in France and being in the US and being here. And we've talked while you've done my hair about the culture that you have and all the amazing places that you've lived. And I'm curious what you think in regards to, and now that you've given all this data, this is perfect, but I'm curious what you think about Canada's relationship to alcohol in comparison to living in France and your time in the States. And do you think that we just behave differently and so it's more of an issue? Because I think having lived here my whole life, we often hear that because people in France have an apéro and they have a drink with their meals, it's almost like they're less likely to have an addiction because you're doing it at 16. But I also hear people are drinking so much earlier. How is that not maybe having an issue? So I'm curious, your perspective as someone who's lived in all of these places, how do we sit in that issue? Granted, we've heard. So, we've heard not great, but from your perspective.
But I don't have any data.
Yeah.
Ivor has the data.
I'm a weirdo. It's okay.
But, just kind of like an observation. It's so I'll say this. It's when I first got here, or even in the US, and mind you, also I was like a young adult, right? So the events that I'm attending are different compared to what I was attending in France. But my first impression was that Canadian, they drink, they just spend their time drinking. That was really my first impression. In the US, same thing. It really felt like that's the only thing. That's how the only way they know how to have fun. Like you said, in France, we do, like, there's a lot of apéro or just gathering, the social gathering. So you have your friends home or your family home. So we do a lot of that, just hors d'oeuvre, or things like that, really experiences. And it's not really it's not centered around drink or alcohol, but more, spending time together and really enjoying the time that we're spending together. When I got in the US, it was about, we were more, partying a lot. And here, same thing. It was, or every single event was centered around alcohol. So my impression was, that, they just drink, so they just, spend their time drinking. But I feel like it also depended on where I was in life. So I wasn't attending a certain type of event in France also. That could have been that. So that's really my perspective there. Now, I'll say that, it changed a little bit, throughout the years, because I'm also spending a lot of time with, communities here who are, I might have met them, in France, for example. I spend a lot of time with the Cameroonian community, or just at different, type of, communities, and then I see how they behave, and I'm thinking, okay, but if I hadn't met these people in a different setting, okay, this is how they like to have fun, so they're always thinking about when we think, okay, let's get together. My first thing is, okay, what are we gonna eat and what are we gonna, but they think, okay, what are we having, So I'm just like, it's just maybe the time, yes, where I was in life, I will say, and people I am around also.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Thank you. I'm going to change the next question. So I'm going to give you my answer so you have time to think about it. Ooh, we love on the spot questions. I was going to ask how you navigate events, and I feel like you've all answered that. But one thing that I realized I didn't really ask is what supports did you use, if you did use supports, to be in this place, whether it's friends because it's a health mindset, or whether you actually sought out support to get sober or have a more sober lifestyle. I can go at length about mine. But I genuinely, when I moved in with my dad, who is Muslim, so there is not even cooking wine in the house. It's a very, very sober house. The first thing that helped me, unfortunately, is the pandemic. I was locked in a house with a person who I had felt abandoned me, being my dad. And so while going to sobriety therapy in Ottawa and living with the person who I felt had caused me a lot of harm, it was very easy to ask the questions and find solutions to the things that had caused me to drink, or the things that I felt made me drink out of the discomfort of who I was. I learned a lot of skills and support and did a lot in terms of therapy, and I still have the same therapist, homeboy Jeff. We absolutely love. You've heard me talk about Jeff every week. Shout out to Jeff. Yeah. But I honestly was able to, the thing that I learned the most was about your core beliefs. I believed that I was both too much and not enough, so I became a people pleaser, and I adapted myself into being this small person and drinking so that people would like me because I was uncomfortable with who I was. And then when I became comfortable with who I was, it was so much easier to be able to say no and have boundaries and have the kind of control that I'm hearing on the other end of this panel because I did not have that kind of control or those types of boundaries. But what I needed was a different community, my dad and my family's support, and then to actually reach out and ask for that help. How did you find through your journey any support that brought you to where you are now?
The beginning of the journey was interesting because, similar to what we were talking about, there was a mass separation of friendships. So what I found myself was kind of just introverting and being like, I'm going to sit and play video games and not talk to anybody for a bit. But then when I started to kind of reintegrate myself back into the world, it was partly speaking to people that had been through a similar kind of situation, who had somebody who had dealt with alcoholism, so we kind of trauma bonded on that. But also was the fact of just being very defined in myself, and the fact of, I don't know how long I got left on this planet, but I'm pretty sure I don't want to be drunk 25% of the time of that. That was my internal thing. And then from there was the fact of, I'm going to raw dog the remainder of my existence. I'm going to just literally experience everything and have it. That's literally,
that's what I say.
Right. But it's the fact of, we look at this planet, there's so many amazing things to do, so many things to experience, great conversation with friends. The amount of conversations I probably had with friends that I've forgotten through alcohol, I'll probably never forgive myself for. And those kind of amazing moments of, really understanding somebody are lost to Smirnoff or something like that.
Not a sponsor.
Not a sponsor. 100%. Diageo's really not going to have any fun with this, but that was kind of my kind of push towards it, was the fact of, I really want to experience everything and remember it. That was it.
Thank you. Renesha, how about you?
Yeah, I think for me it's a little different because I was doing that 1 year challenge, I kind of had like an excuse, which is like perfect because no one, like people would bug me less because I just be like, I'm doing a 1 year challenge. Like, so they kind of support you a bit more, even though they don't. Like, come on, have this one. Oh, support me.
Not my friend.
Yeah. Those are the people. Yeah. But it kind of just helped being like, it was just something to fall back on. Like, oh, I'm just doing a 1 year challenge, guys. Like, oh, I'm not going to drink tonight. So like, even if I was in those scenarios where like I felt the pressure, I could still kind of get out of it. And then besides that, I just really relied on having just something else to drink. Like, so, if I am going out, usually I would avoid kind of like, if I was going to feel the pressure, I'd just avoid it. But also, you don't want to be like like, you don't want to be like home by yourself. Like, I do want to still with my friends. So if we were going to a bar, I would make sure that like they have non-alcoholic options on the menu. So I'm researching, seeing what's available for me to drink when I'm there, so I can still enjoy myself. And just being prepared, like having non-alcoholic drinks at home. So if I'm like stressed, I like have something else to drink, and finding other outlets. So when I'm stressed, like maybe I'm going to the gym or like I'm doing something else to like take away from like, oh, I just want to drink. It's like, no, I'm gonna like be productive or like find a different way to like, I don't know, release that stress.
I feel you. I feel you. And Fanny, I know you've had it on lock. Like, if I could aspire to have been anyone, it would be you. But I am curious if, like, in those moments where you were thinking about the party and all of that, like, you've seemed to have had a guiding compass throughout. But anything that you would say to anyone who's thinking about, trying to pivot their lifestyle?
So, maybe I can actually just maybe to piggyback on what you was even the question that you asked both, and I was thinking about that, and I think that there's a moment where I realized this is really not for me, and also even extending some grace to people who are drinking or who are maybe like dependent. So when I was working with this company in the US. So my main role was to actually make sure that we had the right placement for drinks like Smirnoffs and everything. So I had access to a lot of data. And one thing that I realized, because for me, before it was more, there's something in those drinks that makes people be addicted. They just, and so that was my thought process before, working in that industry. And but when I started working, we had access to so much data, and the way we would even place product in stores, and there was such a huge study that was done, before to to understand customer behavior. We had access to the shopping cart, and we had access to literally, like any type of data that you could think of, we had access to those, and that was what would allow us to make decision on how and where to place products and drinks in stores. So when I saw that, I remember thinking, it was fascinating because I was in marketing, and I'm just like, oh my God, we have access to all those numbers. And I remember, always going by this thought, we can actually just press a button and people will do what we want them to do. It was that precise. And so I think at that point I realized, it's not that people are just maybe, they don't have like a strong, power. It's just that the company on the other side are so well equipped that they can make you do anything they want. When there's the Super Bowl, they know exactly where to, what people like to drink with what type of snacks or food, and it's not surprising to have certain type of drinks in maybe like the vegetables section and things like that. So when I saw all those, it was great for me, and it was very fascinating. But at the same time, I thought, oh wow, it's not really us or the people. They have the power to make us do whatever we want. And that really was even a no-brainer. I thought, what? It's even a bigger reason not to give in a way.
Absolutely. Yeah. I agree. Very good. So you said you didn't have data and you had the data. Thank you. We're at the last couple of questions, and then everyone can enjoy the photo booth, the drinks, and the catering. But I wanted to ask, Ivor, I'll start with you and we'll go down the line. Do you think that your sobriety has impacted your career? I personally think I could have not started my career had I gotten sober because I was trying to die actively through substances. Do you think that you would be where you are now had you not made that life change?
Absolutely not. I don't think I would have been in luxury retail. I don't think I would have been able to make a good go of being a police officer. But also just, in the time of meeting you and being a part of the Toronto kind of, scene or network or whatever this is, you meet people that are people who drink regularly and people who don't. But the reality is for me, and I think for you and a lot of this is networking, connections, and relationships. So if you're known as that guy who's kind of the sloppy drunk at these parties, you don't get the invites, you don't get referred and all that kind of stuff. You don't become that guy. So it's very important for me in terms of, I think for everybody, how they are seen in this public eye. In 2025, I know there's Instagram and Snapchat all sitting here, and these are all snapshots of who you are. So I think if it wasn't for my sobriety, I don't think I'd be even sitting here right now, beyond the reality of it's a sober conversation, but knowing you, knowing all these great people inside the crowd,
Yeah, we would have gotten canceled.
100%.
You and I
it would be on CP24 for the
wrong reasons. You'd be on
reasons.
TMZ for the wrong reasons, not your current reasons. Yeah, we would be hooligans out there. We would have never been invited anywhere. What about you, Renesha? What do you think?
I definitely agree.
I agree you would be canceled.
Canceled.
Definitely. Like, it's so funny. I just noticed that, like, I don't want to sound cheesy, but whatever. I believe it. I'm not gonna. So, like, I noticed that as soon as I stopped drinking, it was like, I'm like very spiritual person. So, like, I noticed that like everything's kind of changed. Like, I was like vibrating at like a very high level, and then I started to attract like everything I wanted in my life, which is like, this is so awesome. And I was like, oh my god, it's amazing. And like, I don't know. I don't want to go into like too many details, but pretty much I just attracted everything I wanted in my life. I landed my dream job. I got all these brand deals. I met you guys. Like, everything was like, incredible. And I just think that like it does actually make a difference. Like, because when you drink, you're like,
it's low vibrational.
Right. So you're attracting those things. So when you start to attract the things you want to attract, and people that align with that. So
I just think being able to say yes to opportunities. Like, you can't say yes to all the things you want to do if you're hungover all the time. The amount of things I flaked on. The first time I met Tyler and Karen, I was on day 2 of a Coke bender, modeling half naked. Barely remember meeting them.
Best friend.
Yeah. Barely remember that. And I remember we had talked about modeling and journalistic opportunities, and I never followed up. And it's another friend in the audience who ran into them and asked if they knew who I was. And apparently I hadn't ruined that first impression, because now we're sitting here and I'm modeling on the walls of this place. But at the time I was like nips out, dry-nosed sadness. And I would have never said yes to any positive opportunities that they would have presented me, and now we're able to be here. So low vibration, garbage vibration is what I would say.
Yeah.
That's my opinion. Fanny, what about you? Do you think that your ability to be I know, but your ability to be disciplined the way that you are and have, the health consciousness that you have and the path that you have, do you think that that's impacted your design brand and the work that you do?
I think actually it has in a way. I was actually talking earlier with about some events that I've done regarding my business, so when I moved in Canada, just to give you a backstory, so I'm a designer and then I make clothing, decor, accessories, and when I moved in Canada, so I was doing a lot of fashion shows and pop-up events, around the city. And but I was always attending other people's events. So let's say we're doing a fashion show, there's like a reception. It was always their events. And one thing that I've realized, especially coming from France and the experience that I've, just the experience I was used to. For me, it was events that I've attended here were very much centered around alcohol, right? But there was something missing, and it was the experience. And I feel like that's one thing that I've added because I wasn't drinking. I started actually hosting my own events. I'll throw some of my own fashion shows and reception, and for a key moment around my business, like anniversaries or maybe a new collection launch, and it was always a big point of mine to make sure that people would experience my work. So it wasn't, drink or alcohol was really like the last thing in my mind. So I really had to be creative. Okay, how do I make it a lasting, make it so that it's a great experience for my audience. So yeah, I think not drinking really helped because I had to really go deeper and make sure that I would cater like either fashion show or have like something specific during those events. Let's say if we're meeting for like 3 hours or 5 hours depending on the length of the event. I had to make sure that it was a memorable event, and my main focus wasn't the alcohol. It was everything else. So I think that it has impacted, and in a good way, I would say.
Amazing. Thank you. Last question, and I will do it in reverse order this time just for fun. What would you say to anybody here who's considering sobriety, dabbling in it from a health perspective, from your personal perspective? Why do you think they either should consider it as an option?
For me today, it's really became a lifestyle, and I think that if you are people who actually consume alcohol, or if you're looking to to really be more health conscious, I'll say to educate yourself. One thing that really make it even stronger, as I'm standing here today, is that I went through all the different phases, not being allowed to, and then with my work, and today I just read a lot about what it does actually to my body. And that's, anything from the alcohol, from the sugar. So understanding that made me even more firm in my decision not to just, dive into it and not to overconsume it. So say educate yourself and really, I think that there's so many good materials out there on social media, not on social media, like podcasts or books that you can read that really can help understand the health benefits when it comes to not drinking.
Amazing. Renesha, what about you? What would you say to anyone considering dabbling in it?
Yeah, I think you should just go for it. Like, don't be afraid to, don't be afraid to be judged, because now, honestly, it's a cool thing to do. Everyone's just like, I'm sober now. So I think it kind of gives people more of an opportunity to want to try it, because it's more common, right? You meet more people that are sober, and you're like, okay, maybe I'm sober curious. I want to try this. So I think give it a go. Start by doing, maybe you just want to go a week. Maybe you want to go a month. and stock up on non-alcoholic options.
Yeah.
So, go to the supermarket, grab, if you used to drink.
Rubicon, Groovy, Sober Market,
Yeah.
Bevies,
Yeah.
pick it up. Noah. Noah.
Big on Noah.
So if you used to drink beer, there's great non-alcoholic beers. If you used to drink wine, so there's always an alternative that
Yeah.
you could get to help kind of make you forget that you're not drinking hard liquor,
Yeah,
And so if you have those options ready at hand, it makes it a lot easier just to do that and see how you feel. And then find friends that support you. It's a lot harder to not drink if your friends are forcing you to drink, if they don't believe and they want to make you feel bad about not drinking. Those aren't people you want in your circle. So surround yourself with people who support you, maybe some other friends that are sober curious. Try it together. I think that makes it a lot easier. Maybe you have a friend to keep you accountable.
Yeah.
And just go for it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Accountability buddies are
Accountability
all
buddy.
here.
That's it.
Ivor, final thoughts?
I'm going to end on data.
Damn it.
Sorry. It's just all I've been sitting in my mind for the entire day. 2019, 3,782 people died of alcohol-related diseases in Canada. In 2020, when we had the pandemic, it went to 17,059. Figure out what your why is, and then do it now. That's it.
Thank you so much. Thank all three of you so much for this conversation. I appreciate all of you. Before I let you all get up, I just want to say, Hidden Smirk, Tisha, this beautiful woman in blue, has the photo booth in the back by the beverages. We're asking for testimonial videos if you are comfortable doing so. It's 15 seconds. Thank you. We're asking you to either talk about your relationship with alcohol if you're comfortable, talk about what you would like to see more at fashion events, doesn't have to be booze related, talk about what you liked about this event, obviously not booze related. And what's the fourth one? We don't know, but go over there and find out. Answer our questions. It's a surprise. We're going to compile them if you participate and do a little recap of them after, or go just take your photo if you don't want to be on camera speaking. Photos are, we're going to, yeah. You're all now on camera.
Let's keep talking.
Keep talking? Well, what do you want from me? Yeah, sober stories. There are 3 flavors of Rubicon. There are 2 flavors of Groovy over there to have. The catering has arrived, so please all go and eat. And thank you all for being attentive for an hour while we talk about why we all don't drink. And go have a non-alcoholic drink. Thank you all so much.